Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&A, so let me get my hat on. And let's get to this first question. Alright. Couldn't the same argument for straps be made for chalk? I know chalk is mainly for sweaty hands, but if a chunk of building falls on someone you care about, you would probably need to deadlift it up without straps and chalk, right? Interesting question, but people aren't, when they ask things like that, they aren't thinking through the difference between straps and chalk. Chalk doesn't necessarily help you always grip better. It only helps you grip better if you have sweaty hands and they're wet. Alright? If you're going to grab a chunk of a building, it's probably powdery already. If you're going to grab something in an emergency like a slick car bumper or something, a piece of metal, if you're smart, you're probably going to grab your coat, your clothing, blue jeans, something to wrap under it to lift it up. In an emergency situation, you're unlikely to have this happen. And the difference is, unlike straps, you still have to grip anything that you pick up with chalk. But the point is, you can't train yourself to be better at gripping stuff with slippery hands. You're going to be limited by your overall grip strength no matter what. Alright, and meaning if you were to try to pour water on your hands instead of chalk so that you had slippery hands, or just leave the sweat on them, what's ultimately going to happen training that way, you're more likely to damage the skin in your hands. Chalk, one of the biggest things it does is it dries it out so that you don't get really wet hands. You don't get hands that are overly moisturized with sweat and other things, because why? They tear easier. You rip the skin of your hand easier when you train that way. So essentially, lifting really heavy with no chalk, even liquid chalk something, or with wet hands, which would be the reason you would train without the chalk. If you were to do that, all you would do is subject yourself to a higher risk of injury every time you deadlift. There'd be no benefit to this. And that is the difference. That's a big difference. Let's say you had sweaty hands and you had to grab something in some sort of emergency. You have something similar to chalk at any time. Just grab a handful of dried dirt or sand and rub it in your hands real quick, and now you've dried your hands. That can be done in a second or two if you have to run over and lift something. Now, the other thing to consider is when you do have to lift something, you're not as concerned about injury. Meaning, if you're lifting something really heavy that's fallen on top of someone you love in an emergency, are you more concerned with injury of your hands that could always heal later? Yeah, you might have to take a couple weeks off from heavy lifting after you save them. Or are you concerned with saving them in the moment? Most likely, you're more concerned with saving them in the moment. So I understand where you're trying to go with this, but the reality is it's not a comparable situation. Because again, you still build massive amounts of grip strength with chalk. You're just keeping your hands dry. That is literally all it's about, keeping your hands dry, so that in some cases, if your hands are pretty slippery, it can affect grip. But the other thing is injury prevention in general. Drier hands tear less easy when you're gripping stuff. It has to do with that extra moisture in there, making your hands more prone to tearing when they're subjected to a really, really heavy weight that you have to grip. Alright, next question. Hi, from the UK. I always train weights and cardio in the morning, and I found that my performance, especially my lifts, are not negatively affected if I do not eat beforehand. I generally eat a fairly high carb meal before bed, usually oatmeal, and my diet is typically high carbs generally. So I wanted to ask, is there any reason to fit in a morning meal or snack before lifting, as I like to just get up and go and feel fine doing this? Thanks. This comes to the point of saying if it's not broke, don't fix it, but it depends upon your goals. If you prefer to not eat breakfast, you prefer to train fasted, you feel better that way, and it helps you manage your overall food intake so that you maybe don't gain weight as quickly. If that's your goal, then by all means carry on. But if your goal is to say, I want to gain as much muscle as possible from a workout, or I want to gain as much muscle as possible every week or every month, you need to eat carbs before you train every single time. Now you're going to say, but it doesn't seem to negatively affect my performance. Well, have you plotted it in alternating months? Meaning, have you run a similar style program and did a whole month without carbs before you train and a whole month with food before you train, and plotted the difference and alternated them, say 3 different phases of each one, so that you could get a good baseline and see how much your performance improved over the weeks and months as a comparison? And if you haven't done that, then how do you know it doesn't seem to? because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about small changes in performance plotted over time. And it's simply put, people who consume carbs before they train generally see overall better performance over time. Is it dramatically better? Like, are you going to gain twice the progress? Probably not, but it is going to be a measurable amount. If you were to actually track it and look at it, it would be a measurable amount of difference. So what we're getting into here is kind of nitpicking to the point of, are you pursuing maximum gains, or do you have another goal in mind? Meaning, not everyone's in the gym to make maximum gains. Some people's goals are to stay at a certain leanness, and they don't care if it costs them a third of their muscle gains or half of their muscle gains every year, as long as they're making some gains and they're maintaining the body composition that they want. So it really comes down to what your specific goals are and what it is you are trying to get out of your training. Right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. But if you think that you're going to gain the same muscle and performance lifting weights faster that you will consuming carbs first over time, you're sadly mistaken. The data and every coach in the world is going to disagree with you there. It seems to be the case, but you actually probably haven't tracked it closely. If you did, you're going to find out it's really not the case. So this is really goal specific. All right, next question. Do you get most or any of the benefits of LISS cardio from walking 1,000 steps or whatever number you choose per day? Would your average daily step count at 10,000 plus mean that you're active even if you sit at an office job for 10 hours a day? I usually try to hit that number from a combination of walking, treadmill, etc. by the end of the day. How are you going to walk 10,000 steps in a day when you work a 10-hour-a-day office job at a desk? The math doesn't really add up. That's a lot of steps. You're probably walking for, could be hours. In fact, I almost need to do the math in my head. If you did a step every second. Let's see, 60 per minute. What's 60? 3,600 per hour? Yeah, man, you're going to need like 3 hours of walking. So I'm not sure about that. Maybe you're putting that in, though, because I don't know what your schedule and your life looks like, but that is a lot of walking. Now, the fact of the matter is, would it count towards your overall, like, milder LISS cardio? Yeah. If it's not done in long bouts, though, it's not going to give you the same endurance, because that's the difference between LISS cardio for endurance. You really need, if you're trying to improve endurance, you really need to be doing LISS for an hour straight of some type. But yeah, your overall general activity, I mean, someone who walks for 2 or 3 hours every day and who lifts weights and does other training on top of that, that's physically active. That's a physically active person. And yeah, there are benefits to that. Just general physical activity that isn't intense. I mean, something that you could do for an hour straight without a break, that counts as LISS potentially if it elevates your heart rate a little bit. But walking briskly for an hour straight is LISS cardio. But again, it just has to do with how much endurance are you building because of how long are you continuously doing it versus or is it spread out completely through the day in terms of the endurance component. But as far as the physical activity component goes, you are dead on. You are right. It actually is better for your health. You count as an active person. If you're basically, yeah, that's the equivalent of walking for 3 hours every day. If you're walking for 3 hours every day and you exercise separately, lifting weights and everything, you're an active person. That would count as a fairly active person, no matter how you break it down. All right, next question. Hi Jason, I'm 6'3" and my legs are a bit too long and they get in the way of my deadlift. If I lower my hips a bit to get more quad involvement, I'd hit my knees. So I have to modify the trajectory by throwing the bar slightly forward to pass my knees. On the other hand, with my hips more elevated, I struggle to involve the quads and it becomes like a stiff leg deadlift. So I'm leaving pounds on the table. I also have this problem for the clean, but since you're not an Olympic lifting coach, I'd like to hear your thoughts on solving this for the deadlift, and maybe it can carry over to the first pull on the clean. Thanks. All right. Longer legs. Here's the thing that you need to worry about. Why is it that you're hitting your knees on the way up? Meaning, yeah, you're squatting too low, but you're also getting excessive dorsiflexion. The deadlift, you don't want your knees passing your toes, just like on the squat. So if you're dropping your hips low enough that your knees are jutting forward, then that's not really ideal for deadlift. Yeah, of course you're going to hit your knees. You're simply dropping your hips too low. You're going to get quad involvement on the deadlift no matter what. All right, unless you are literally doing a stiff leg deadlift, you are getting quad involvement. Is it maximum quad involvement? No. But is it significant enough to stimulate some growth? Yes, it is. Your quads are going to get bigger and stronger doing that. And if you're dealing with limb limits and you're hitting your knees, that's leaving pounds on the floor too. So you need to find the right balance there for what you're trying to do. And I'm going to say in your case, you need to come back more. You need to find a way to get your ass back more when you deadlift. You're leaned too far forward most likely, and that is what's causing your knees to jump forward when you're going lower. You need to probably go a hair higher on your hips and what you're doing and find a way to go pull backwards, at least with your hips and your butt. And I know some people are going to be like, but that's going to put more stress. Your back is going to be less upright possibly, and there's going to be a lot of arguments. But here's the thing, it's a deadlift, guys. You're going to have to find your ideal leverages so that the bar clears everything, so that the bar travels in a fairly straight path so you can pull it faster. That's just the reality of it. You're going to have to find that position to where you don't have dorsiflexion, but you still get low enough to pull maximally. And you're just going to have to play with it a bit. And it sounds to me like you haven't found the sweet spot. But the other thing is, are you sure you're leaving pounds on the floor? Meaning, if you have your hips just a little bit higher, but you're not having to change the bar path to miss your knees, are you sure you're leaving pounds on the floor? I mean, why are you going out of the way just to ensure you're getting more quad involvement on a big overall exercise like that at the expense of breaking down your technique? Probably not ideal. Probably not ideal. If you're really that worried about your quads, throw some front squats in. If you really think they're not getting enough development from your deadlifts and your cleans and your push presses and you want more quad, front squats will solve that. They'll solve that real quick. Problem solved. You can go back to deadlifting in the way that lets you deal with your own biomechanics and levers more and get more quad development from your front squats. This is not a difficult problem to solve, brother. Alright, next question. Hey Jason, as someone who will be starting your novice program soon, if you have a strong enough bench that you are hitting the strength goals you set for going down to the 3x5 sets, but my other lifts like squats and deadlifts aren't at that point yet, should I just do the benching for 3 sets and leave the other exercises at 5x5, or only shift the exercises all at one from 5x5 to 3x5 once my other lifts catch back up? Thanks so much. Cheers. You're looking at it wrong. You don't necessarily need to adjust the volume for each exercise. You could, but a very simple solution. Let's say you're doing 6 different exercises in a workout. This doesn't have to be my novice program. You're doing 6 different exercises, and you have one exercise that has pulled way ahead in terms of strength ratios. When you look at charts or whatever, it has dramatically gotten stronger than your other exercises. Maybe those body parts go easy for you. Maybe you're dominant at that lift, and you're concerned about muscle balance, strength balance, everything else. And you want to focus more on the other lifts. But you want to maintain everything that you've already gained on the one that's way ahead. Quit adding weight to the bar. Quit adding weight to the bar. Use the same weight you've been using. Meaning if you're doing 5x5 on your bench press with 185, but your squats are horrifically low, they're at 225, and your deadlift is 275 for sets of 5, and you're like, man, I mean, my bench is way ahead, my overhead press is way ahead, because they're usually going to go concurrently sometimes, and stop progressing on them. Leave 185 on the bar. Don't go up to 190. Stay at 185 till you get your squat caught up. It might take 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Leave the bench press where it is then. You can always play catch up later. You can always play catch up later when the other lifts are caught up, and that doesn't have to be just the bench press. It could be true if your squat was to excel way ahead and you wanted to focus more on the bench or your overhead press. You can leave the same weight on the bar and progress on the other exercises more, so you're focusing more of your adaptation and recovery into those while preserving everything you have on the bench. In fact, if you keep doing the 5x5, say at 185 on the bench, and you do that for 10 weeks and just leave it alone, eventually you're gonna get stronger doing that no matter what, because you've gotten so comfortable using the same weight all the time but not having to waste adaptation on it, that eventually you're going to outgrow that weight anyways. It's going to be less taxing on you, and when you do try to progress on it again, you're going to find that you're going to progress relatively quickly. So again, I wouldn't worry about it. Don't back the volume down. Keep the volume where it is. Keep the weight where it is so that you can put your efforts into other exercises while maintaining 100% of your progress on the one that you're way more advanced on, if you're concerned with the balance of it. All right, next question. Jason, you've touched on this topic before, but I'm a truck driver and I work Monday through Friday, with each day being at least 12 hours. After a day like that, it's hard to get to the gym with my wife and 11-month-old at home waiting to see you. I have my own power rack and weights and was thinking of working out on the weekend only. I know it's not optimal, as I'm used to doing upper lower, but this new job is taking all of my time. Any ideas when you might be able to squeeze a session in midway through the week? And 2 days for sure on the weekend? No, it's not ideal, but you know what? Ideal is what works for your life. Meaning, you know, you've got commitments. You work a long week. You have a 60-hour work week. You got a wife at home. You got a young child. You got a wife who probably needs you. And I get that. So not a big deal. That's not a big deal at all. Train on the weekends. Do a full body Saturday and Sunday. Is that ideal for recovery and growth? No. Are you going to gain probably half the muscle that you would gain if you spread it out properly, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Yeah, you're probably only going to gain about half the muscle. But you're still going to make gains. You're still going to get bigger. You're still going to get stronger. You're still going to get healthier. And you're not going to sacrifice your life. You're still going to be doing a lot better than the person who doesn't lift weights. A lot better. And you know what? If you have time on a Wednesday evening or whatever, let's say you do that, Wednesday's probably your ideal to slip in and just do a quick workout when you get home. That way you also have 2 full days between, to where, you know, it's exclusively family time. Okay, so when you get home from work Monday, Tuesday, you have all family time. Thursday, Friday, you have all family time after you get home. Now the Wednesday, like I said, you could work a quick workout on Wednesday, but it doesn't need to be long. Come in and do 1 set of each exercise, just a quick workout. Almost just, in a way, just to re-stimulate protein, since it's from the weekend. It can be a 15-minute workout. And then that way, you 15 minutes and get back to family time. It's not a problem. This is totally doable, brother. Totally doable. Alright, next question. How do I get back to squatting 400 pounds for reps? 6 months ago, I was 200 pounds body weight and able to squat 500 max. But one day I felt a tear while doing 440, decided never to do squats over 400 pounds till I gained more muscle. During those 6 months, I did rehab. My leg back to normal and was able to hit a volume PR of 225 for 30 reps. Now I'm 210 body weight, but how do I get back to squatting really heavy? Start adding weight to the bar. Alright, you've got your volume where you want it. You're like, well, I need to get stronger. I want to lift heavy weight again. Okay, well, throw 315 on. Do 315 and do 3 sets of 5. Do that, and every time you come to the gym, add 5 pounds. Squat 3 days, come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Add 5 pounds. Within a couple of months, you'll be back to repping out 405. You'll be repping 400 pounds. You'll be repping 400 pounds again. And if, like I said, you gained muscle, you've rehabbed everything, you've got the volume there, now you just have to regain the neural efficiency to lift heavier weights. It'll come real fast. Just keep it slow. And that way, if you're only adding 5 pounds each workout, what's going on? You're not gaining it very fast. You're not risking injuries. Because you're keeping the progress slow. 5 pounds a workout. Like I said, go to 315, because I know you can do sets of 5. It's going to feel really easy. And that's the whole point. If you are previously a 500-pound squatter from 6 months ago, you have done a lot of rep work with 400. This is going to come real fast and real easy, particularly if you've been doing other exercises to maintain your muscle. Like you said, you're up 10 pounds. Just add 5 pounds every workout. That's 15 pounds a week, right? Which is basically 60 pounds a month. So end of the month you'll be 385. Midway through the next month you'll be back to 400 for reps. Easy as that. Simple, straightforward, and effective. And so why take that long? So you don't risk injury again. Anytime you go back to lifting really heavy, you need to do it in a progressive manner. You don't ever want to just jump like 30 or 40 pounds added to an exercise. You have intermediate workouts in between to build it back up. Periodization even works on that way. You don't, when you're doing even linear periodization, you don't go straight from 10 rep sets. You don't go straight from 10 rep sets to triples. There's a couple of blocks in between, so that you get used to the heavier weights and the heavier loads. That's why in periodization it's done that way. You get used to it. You adapt each one to the new block. Because there's significant weight increases every 3 weeks, usually with linear block periodization. And it works well. It keeps injury rates lower. Gets everything back in proper working order. So that you can prepare over the course of weeks to lift heavy again. Well, you can apply the same principle to what you're doing, but in this case you're not doing linear periodization, you're just doing linear progression, because it'll work for you since you're starting way below where you previously have been. Since you've rehabbed yourself, you know everything is strong. That'll let you build it back up and get your body used to it with each workout. But you'll get there relatively quickly that way. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.